Welcome, Neogenians, to Dawn of the New Earth. My name is Morgue, and I am an ex-Christian revealing hidden knowledge to create a new Earth. And today we're taking a look at the most disturbing creation story ever that was banned from the Bible. And it describes a war between darkness, light, and spirit, and the very graphic birth of the material world. And yeah, it gets pretty intense, let me tell you. It's going to be very interesting because what we're going to be exploring today is a book called The Paraphrase of Shem. We actually started reading it about a week ago. And like I said, it described this war. And today we're getting to the part where the material world comes onto the scene in an extremely graphic way. But not only is this just an interesting thing to read about this story of the creation of the universe and the world, but it also is important because this war between darkness, light, and spirit is also going on within us. So as we take a look at this process, as this war happening in this story, we're going to understand how this war is actually taking part to this day within each and every single one of us. So it's very important for understanding how we are evolving as minds, as souls, as eternal beings. So we're going to get started right away. As always, if you enjoy my work, please like and subscribe. And if you want to help my channel grow, become a member on YouTube by hitting the join button right below this video, or Patreon. And if you hit the join button, you can see all the different tiers. You can get access to a lot of different things like our Discord server and our members only videos. There's a lot of them. There's a new one every single week. In fact, we're having a members only video right after this, which is called, well, actually, I'm doing a reaction video to a doctor who says that the mind is not annihilated after death. So I'll be reacting to that. That'll be really interesting. Anyway, if you want to get access to all that stuff and help my channel out, hit the join button right below this video. I appreciate it very much. And I want to remind you that my books are available. My first two books are available right now. The links are in the description of this video. And so if you don't know where to begin with this one. This is Neogenesis, Dawn of the New Mind, and it describes how to reach a higher consciousness rationally. My second book is available as well, Meta-Rationalism, the New Science of Mind, which describes how this is a mathematical reality that emerges from nothingness. And my third book is not out yet, but you can pre-order it, which is Cosmogenesis, the Awakening Universe. I know that's a lot. Let's start with the first one. It's a good, simple, easy way to begin. And it's important info. And as always, follow me on Spotify, Dawn of the New Earth on Spotify. All the links for all these things are in the description. Let's talk about this very disturbing and graphic description of the birth of the material world in the Paraphrase of Shem. Now, we're going to be reading directly from this book that was once banned by the church. And for those who want to know where you can read this, so many people ask me, where can I read this? Just go to gnosis.org. That's gnosis.org. And they have almost all of the Gnostic Gospels there that you can read for free. It's a great resource, great website. I highly recommend it. All right, so let's get started here. So the very first passage that we're going to where we left off last time is titled Darkness Ejaculates Mind into the Womb of Nature. But before we get there, I want to give a brief recap of what this book is about. If you're just coming in, if you didn't see last week's video, that's fine. I want to give you a quick rundown because this is really important. So this book is about a being called Deus, who is giving secret knowledge to Shem. And Deus very likely represents Seth or Jesus Christ. It's a savior figure. So this likely represents Jesus Christ. But it's a savior figure known as Deus. So what Deus is revealing to Shem is that in the beginning, there were three forces: the force of light, the force of darkness, and the force of spirit. So let's just give a quick understanding or recap of what these are, because as we get into the graphic birth material world, all these forces are going to be battling with each other. And so it's important to really demarcate them and understand what they are and what they represent. So the light, or the infinite light in this story, represents the source, the ultimate divine source, the highest form of purity and goodness. It's beyond anything physical. It's not physical. It's where all light comes from. And this is pure divine light that has not been corrupted or divided. And this divine infinite light is going to play a key role in fixing essentially the mess that darkness created. It steps in to try and reclaim or purify what darkness has corrupted. And so this is the role of the infinite light. Now, there is then the spirit, and the spirit is also called, what did they call it? Was it the little light? What did they name it exactly? It was something like the smaller light or the lesser light that they call the spirit. So the spirit is related to light, but it's the smaller light. And what is the spirit? Because remember, we have light, darkness, and spirit. The spirit symbolizes the divine spark within the world. It's like a piece of the infinite light. But we're going to see that this piece of infinite light, this spirit, gets entwined in nature, in the nature that darkness created. And it's very shocked and burdened by all the chaos and corruption that darkness has created. And so spirit is constantly struggling in a corrupted world. And this spirit's journey is all about trying to return to its pure state. And you're going to see that it has a relationship. Spirit has a relationship between darkness. Spirit has a relationship between light and Decius. We're going to see Decius represents something very important here. Okay, so let's just continue. By the way, if any of this sounds confusing, just go with it. It'll all start to fall into place and make sense. So then we have darkness, and the darkness represents corruption, chaos, evil, and is associated with the material world. It's the opposite of the infinite light. It's everything impure, everything destructive, and the darkness is constantly corrupting and defiling nature and mixing mind with chaos and division. And it's very deceptive and taking on like false forms of the spirit to mislead. And throughout all this, the darkness is fighting against the infinite light and the spirit as well. So you have these different cosmic forces. And then so then we just have to understand, well, what is Decius? So we have the light, which is the source of all. Then we have darkness, which is corruption in the material world. And then we have spirit that's kind of like caught in the middle between this battle. Then we have Decius. Decius is this divine figure that's described as the son of the infinite light. And what this being is able to do is sort of intermediary, where it is able to link the infinite light to spirit and to the material world. It's like the messenger of light. It's bringing light to the spirit. It's bringing light to the chaotic, dark world, and tries to fix the corrupted elements. So those are the main characters to understand. But here's where I think it'll make things a lot clearer. Is remember, because I said that we can understand this as forces within ourselves. And when we understand this within ourselves, it makes stuff a lot more clear. So we can understand the infinite light to be our higher self, our true self, our divine self, our eternal self. We can understand darkness to be the unconscious, the shadow self, the id. And we can understand spirit as being consciousness or the ego. Not ego in a negative sense, but ego is the center of the field of consciousness. So this very much, you can draw a parallel between either Freudian psychology or Jungian psychology. In Freudian psychology, you have, well, so in this story, you have darkness, spirit, and infinite light. In a Freudian model, that would be, darkness would be the id, which is all of our animalistic instincts and urges. The light would be the superego, which is our striving to be morally good. And then spirit would be the ego that sits between the two, sort of caught in the middle between the pull of the light and the pull of darkness, or the pull of needing higher ideals and instinctual desires. Jungian interpretation is similar. In the Jungian interpretation, the darkness would be, again, the unconscious or the shadow self. Ego, a spirit would still be ego. Here, light would be the higher self, the totality of the self. Okay, so this model helps us understand this war between the different forces that are all happening within us. Because what is the higher self, by the way? The higher self in Jungian psychology, which Jung just calls the self with a capital S, is just the totality of everything that you are. And then the ego is your field of consciousness, which is a very tiny sliver of what you are. And then the unconscious is all of the aspects that your ego self is not aware of. So in this model, we can understand the interactions of the psyche as being reflected in the interaction of, the light dark forces described in this story. But here's the cool part. We can take it a step further, because we're going to see light, darkness, and spirit are going to be in this battle, and spirit's going to get all entangled in the material world. Well, we can understand this as well as being like the material body, like nature. As we get to nature, we can understand, oh, well, this is our material body. Spirit or ego has been ensnared in a material body and is fighting with these forces of darkness and light, trying to transcend and return to the realm of pure light. And so then what does Derdekius represent? Derdekius represents higher consciousness, because Derdekius is what is going to allow the spirit or ego or little light to connect with the higher light. That's what Derdekius does. He's like an intermediary that allows the little light to connect with the higher light, the infinite light. And so again, in a psychological model, Derdekius would represent higher consciousness, because when you attain higher consciousness, or, if we want to use more like mystical terms, Christ consciousness, the understanding that we are all connected and our ability to connect to the source of reality, which allows us to triumph over darkness. Okay, so now we understand all the different players going on. And I know it sounds kind of complicated, but there's only 4 main characters here. We have light, spirit, darkness, and Derdekius. And we can understand this reflected in our psyche. And let's now start and describe the birth of the material world and see where this leads us. Oh, one quick thing that I want to say, and this is an important point. The Gnostics hated the material world. They saw it as totally evil and corrupt and a defiled essence. And so a lot of Gnosticism is about defeating darkness and eliminating darkness and returning to light. All right. Now, I want to make it clear that in our system, the Neogenian system, we don't see the material world as inherently evil. We see it as just matter that can take the form of suffering, or it can take the form of positive experiences as well. It's just a realm of experiences in the material world. And so in our system, we're not so much trying to eliminate darkness, but bring darkness into light. In other words, like integrate it. In other words, harness the power of darkness. We're not like, oh, darkness is just all evil and must be eliminated. It's about harnessing that power and bringing it to light, because we know that energy can't be created or destroyed, only transformed. So we cannot destroy the darkness. We can only transform it by bringing it into the light of consciousness. And this is why Carl Jung says, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. So it's not about ignoring it or denying it or destroying it, because you literally can't. It's about transforming it and integrating it. So I just want to point that out, because that's an important thing to understand as we go forward. But let's start and get into this very interesting description of the material world. So where we left off last time, we had darkness that began to form a womb. And it says, the darkness, or the mind, drew the chaotic fire with which it was covered from the midst of the darkness and the water. And from the darkness, the water became a cloud. And from the cloud, the womb took shape. The chaotic fire, which was a deviation, went there. So what is this talking about here? We're talking about this dark mind, darkness, this dark mind, which we could understand to be unconscious forces. This dark mind is starting to form the material world. And you see all these material elements like water became a cloud, which is wind, water, wind, and the chaotic fire. So you have the mind, the chaotic fire of the mind mixing with water that becomes a cloud. And from the cloud, what is the result of all this? A womb takes shape. A womb takes shape. And the chaotic fire, this fiery force, goes there into the womb. And this is, of course, symbolizing a birth of something that's going to occur. And you have all these material elements combining here. So it says, darkness ejaculates mind into the womb of nature. And so we can understand this as we are mind that has been ensnared in nature. Now, we don't look at it as like, oh, an evil trap or anything, but it can seem like that. It can seem like, oh, we are trapped in these physical bodies. We've become ensnared. Mind, our consciousness has been ensnared in these bodies. And it says, and when darkness saw the womb, he became unchaste, which means he had intercourse. I would say other words other than intercourse. I'm not super like prude or anything. It's just YouTube will flag my video if I say more fun words. But so darkness saw the womb and he had intercourse. And when he had aroused the water, he rubbed the womb. His mind dissolved down to the depths of nature. It mingled with the power of the bitterness of darkness. So you really have here this mixing. Basically, we have this dark force that is corrupting the material world. This dark force that is corrupting nature. This dark force that is not only corrupting nature, but interjecting or ejaculating mind into nature. It says, and the womb's eye ruptured at the wickedness in order that she might not again bring forth the mind. So the womb, so much, the womb wanted to avoid this from happening, so much that it ruptured its own eye. The womb's eye ruptured at the wickedness so that she might not again bring forth the mind. She's trying to avoid this from happening by rupturing its eye. For it was a seed of nature from the dark root. And when nature had taken to herself the mind by means of the dark power, every likeness took shape in her. And when the darkness had acquired the likeness of the mind, it resembled the spirit. So all this happened, by the way, because the darkness was kind of jealous of the light. The darkness was kind of jealous of the light of the spirit, because the spirit is like the little light. And so darkness essentially threw a chaotic tantrum, and all this shit is taking place. And he's ejaculating into nature. He's mixing dark mind into nature. And it says, when darkness had acquired the likeness of the mind, it resembled the spirit. So remember, the spirit is consciousness. The spirit is the light of consciousness. It's the little light. It's not the infinite, eternal light, the pure light, but it's the little light of consciousness, the center of the field of consciousness. And so it's saying that when darkness acquired the likeness of the mind, it resembled the spirit. It wasn't the spirit, but it resembled the spirit. And this is very similar to like an archetypal structure, basically, because your unconscious is mind, but it's filled with archetypal structures that you're not aware of. This is why in our system of psychogenesis and interstar actualization particularly, it's all about making the unconscious conscious by realizing, oh shit, there's all these dark forces in me, and I better learn how to integrate them and structure them or bring them into light so that they are working for having a better life rather than working in the background to cause havoc. And so do you see the parallel here? You have the dark unconscious basically wreaking havoc in the background. And when it says it was like spirit, because it's taking on it's not consciousness, but it's taking on a structure or a pattern. And those are like the archetypes that reside in our unconscious, these patterns that reside in our unconscious mind that we can understand. So I hope you guys enjoy this. I really love seeing the parallels that we can draw to this, because they're so I think they're very apparent, but it's very, very cool. So anyway, it says, for nature rose up to expel it, but she was powerless against it, since she did not have a form from the darkness. For she brought it forth in the cloud, and the cloud shone. A mind appeared in it like a frightful, harmful fire. The mind collided against the unconceived spirit, since it possessed a likeness from him, in order that nature might become empty of the chaotic fire. So what we're talking about here is that we have this corrupted mind. This corrupted mind clashes with the unconceived spirit, which is like a pure divine essence, because it possesses some kind of like semblance of the spirit. But this clash aims to empty nature of its chaotic and destructive elements. But let's continue a little bit here. And it says, and immediately nature was divided into four parts. So you can see, because of this collision, basically what's happening here is we're seeing all of this is like taking place in the womb of nature, and it's very chaotic. There's a lot of chaos happening here. It's very destructive, very, very chaotic. But now we're going to see some form of order arise on the scene. It says, and immediately nature was divided into four parts. Now, what's interesting about this is we're familiar with like the four elements: earth, air, wind, and fire. And it says immediately nature was divided into four parts. Now we're gonna so there's the birth of the material world is now being more structured instead of all this chaos and resistance and havoc. And you say, but we're going to see these four parts or four elements aren't what you might think that they are. I mean, they're not the typical earth, air, wind, and fire. Here you'll see, it's interesting. So nature was divided into four parts, and they became clouds that varied in their appearance. So what were these four parts? They were called hymen, afterbirth, power, and water. So what's all this about? This is pretty, this is pretty graphic for back then. This story, all this, very, very. I mean, I find it fascinating. I think it's interesting. But what's all this about? Well, hymen represents like boundaries or division, and afterbirth represents this. Like the matter, like the material that's being described as afterbirth. Because remember, they look at the material world as being totally evil. So for them, what is the true power of creation comes from the light. So they're kind of talking about matter as like afterbirth, like a byproduct or a consequence, or you know what I mean. It's this. So we have this being described in terms of division or hymen, afterbirth or this material essence, and then power and water. And it says, and the hymen and the afterbirth and the power were chaotic fires. And so you see, we're still having some elements here. There's still some reference to the four elements. We're still getting reference to like fire and water, etc. And it says, and the mind was drawn from the midst of the darkness and the water. Since the mind was in the midst of nature and the dark power, in order that the harmful waters might not cling to it. Because of this, nature was divided according to my will, in order that the mind may return to its power, which the dark root mixed with the mind had taken from it. So remember, Deus is telling this story, which represents Christ or Seth, and in our Jungian understanding of this would represent, or not even a Jungian understanding, in our psychological understanding of this, higher consciousness. So what is Deus doing? What is higher consciousness doing? Deus is saying that nature was divided to allow mind to return to its power, which the dark root mixed with the mind had taken from it. So the dark root just refers to the shadow. So according to this, there's three roots. Reality is based on three roots: light, spirit, and shadow. So the dark root is, or light, spirit, and darkness. I'm sorry, light, spirit, and darkness. And the dark root refers to the darkness. So what basically Deus is doing is making sure that there is a path for mind to be able to return to its power, which darkness had taken from it, in injecting it into this chaos of darkness. And so we can kind of understand this in our own, drawing an analogy again, when we relocalize in these bodies, we forget what we are. Our brain has evolved as a filtering mechanism because it's an evolutionary mechanism. It allows us to survive. If our brain didn't evolve to filter out all unnecessary data, we'd be easily eaten by predators who are focused on the here and now. So that's what our brain does. It filters things out. So essentially what happens here is that we get ensnared in the realm of darkness and forgetfulness, but there is a way through raising our consciousness to regain our power and understanding of what we are. So, but again, I always want to remind you, we're talking in terms of this story, which sees the material world as totally evil. We don't see it that way. We see the material world as more being like a place where we learn, grow, and experience together. It's kind of like, okay, here's a great way to understand it. A computer code and a video game world, always great analogy here. So imagine that the real world was the code. That's the true world, the code. And the video game is like the material world. Well, imagine that video game is just an awful game. It's just torture, it's pain, it's suffering. It's a very hellish video game, right? So according to the Gnostics, they would be like, oh, the video game is evil. The code is what is good. We need to escape the video game and return to the code because the code is evil. The code is suffering. The code is dark. Or I'm sorry, we need to escape the game and return to the code because the game is evil. The game is suffering. The game is darkness. Now, our interpretation of this is more like, yes, the video game might be corrupted right now, but we can transform the game by transforming what the game is structured on, by transforming the code. So in other words, we can program a new game. And what does programming a new game mean? It means creating a new world. creating a world based on higher consciousness and structuring a planetary civilization based on purpose and the principles of maximizing the quality of life for everyone, giving everyone a new experience, an opportunity to grow, learn, live, and thrive. And so you utterly change that video game into suffering into a video game that's immensely fun to play. If it was immensely fun to play, you wouldn't want to escape. If this world was immensely enjoyable, do you think the Gnostics would have thought it was evil? No, they'd be like, hey, this is awesome. This is great. So really what we have to understand is that it's not an evil thing. It is rather simply a projection of the underlying essence of reality. And our goal is to transform it. Our goal is to transform ourselves and transform the world. And of course, enjoy it as well. We always want to remember that it's not just progress for the sake of progress. It's progress for the sake of having a higher quality of life. Some people miss that. You have these two. Some people just think, life is all about pleasure and being in the moment. And then other people who are like, it's just about learning and understanding. Well, it's about both. It's about learning and understanding, which allows us to create environments and opportunities that are more enjoyable and more pleasurable and more satisfying. So they go hand in hand, like everything. There's a purpose for everything. So, anyway, I just want to say we can understand this as like us being ensnared in material bodies, but I just always really want to emphasize how important it is to realize this is not something evil to escape from. It's something that we need to transform. Like the Gospel of Thomas, where Jesus says, the kingdom of heaven is within you and all around you, meaning it's a state of mind, and this is ours. This is our world. This is our world. We just need to shape it into our image, into the image of our divine essence, in our interconnected nature. So anyway, let's just continue. I'm getting a little off topic here. So Derdekius is making sure that mind has an opportunity to return to its power. And did this by dividing the material world. At the division of nature, the dark root separated from the dark power, which it possessed from the mind went into the midst of the power, which was the middle region of nature. So now it says, the light of the spirit is in the confines of nature. The spirit of light, when the mind burdened him, was astonished. So remember, the spirit of light is the little light. It's not the infinite light. It's the little light. It's the ego. And when the mind burdened him, was astonished. What does this mean? We could sort of understand this as sort of like the burden of unconscious forces, the burden of those forces in the background that are constantly shifting our views and our actions without us even knowing it. So the spirit of the light was astonished, like what the hell, when the mind burdened him, all these dark unconscious forces. And the force of his astonishment cast off the burden, and it returned to its heat. It put on the light of the spirit. And when nature moved away from the power of the light of the spirit, the burden returned. And the astonishment of the light again cast off the burden. It stuck to the cloud of the hymen, and all the clouds of darkness cried out, they who had separated from Hades because of the alien power. So a lot of strange symbolism going on here. But the main thing that's happening here is that spirit is burdened by light, or by this dark mind, like forces of the unconscious, and it keeps trying to cast it off, but it keeps returning. Keeps trying to cast off, but it keeps returning. And we can understand this by when we have dark unconscious forces, we can't just ignore them. They'll just return. It's kind of like if you have an anger problem, you might try and suppress that. You might be like, I'm not an angry person, and you suppress your anger. And so you might suppress it for a while, but what's going to happen? It's going to come back because you haven't dealt with it. So you keep trying to suppress, you push it down, try and suppress it, cast it off. But because you haven't dealt with it, because you haven't integrated, it's going to come back. This is the spirit of light who has come in him. And by the will of the majesty, the spirit gazed up at the infinite light. and his light may be pitied, and the likeness may be brought up from Hades. So the spirit is looking up to the infinite light. And when the spirit had looked, I flowed out, I, the son of the majesty, like a wave of light and like a whirlwind of the immortal spirit. So this is so cool. A wave of light. Isn't that awesome? You know, getting into the idea of like, you know, even like light waves, a wave of light. You know, these books are so brilliant, so smart, so intelligent when you really look at, you know, what's hidden within them. But what's going on here? The spirit is in darkness. It's burdened by, you know, dark forces. It's in the material world. And what happens? It gazes up at the infinite light. What happens when it gazes up at the infinite light? Derdekius arrives like a wave of light and a whirlwind of the immortal spirit. In other words, when the ego, spirit, catches a glimpse of the higher self, higher consciousness arises. That is spirit looking at the infinite light, which is what caused the son of the majesty, like a wave of light and a whirlwind of the immortal spirit, to flow out. This coming of the higher consciousness, because the ego glimpsed the higher self, which opened up the possibility of higher consciousness. And I blew from the cloud of the hymen upon the astonishment of the unconceived spirit. The cloud separated and cast light upon the clouds. These separated so that the spirit might return. Because of this, the mind took shape. Its rest was shattered. For the hymen of nature was a cloud that cannot be grasped. It is a great fire. Similarly, the afterbirth of nature is the cloud of silence. It is an august fire. And the power that was mixed with the mind, it too was a cloud of nature that was joined with the darkness that had aroused nature to unchastity or intercourse. The dark water was a frightful cloud, and the root of nature, which was below, was crooked. Since it is burdensome and harmful, the root was blind to the bound of light, which was unfathomable because it had many appearances. All right, so there's a lot of, again, strange symbolism going on with clouds and hymens and afterbirths and crooked roots, all sorts of things, being unchaste, lots of intercourse happening here, arousing nature. Essentially, what all this is doing is talking about how just really emphasizing the darkness and chaos of nature. And when it talks about the root was crooked, right? The root of nature, which was below, was crooked since it's burdensome and harmful. The root of nature, the cause of nature was crooked. Meaning, so remember the forces of what something comes from are called roots, according to this, and its crookedness means, you know, something that's crooked is chaotic. It's not ordered. It's not structured. Something that's crooked, you know, if your house is crooked, that's not good. It's going to fall apart. So this idea that the crooked root of nature is, again, the chaotic, disorderly form of nature. I mean, it's ordered to some extent. This is why they talk about the ordering forces. Like that's the whole point of like hymen and afterbirth and power and water. Hymen being like divisions and boundaries within matter and whatnot. But still, compared to the realms of light, it's crooked. Is basically what it's saying. Now, here's what Derdekius says. So Derdekius, let's see. I want to see how, okay. So Derdekius says, I had pity on the light of the spirit and the mind that the mind had received. I returned to my position to pray to the exalted infinite light that the power of the spirit might increase there and might be filled without dark defilement. So here you have Derdekius, which we can understand is representing higher consciousness, trying to bring the light to, trying to eliminate spirit, illuminate, not eliminate, trying to illuminate spirit. So again, you see that Derdekius, Jesus, this savior, is an intermediary between the little light spirit and the big light, infinite light, where darkness is trying to corrupt everything. And again, we can understand this as higher consciousness as we are being connected to our higher self, being connected to the infinite light. And so this is Derdekius talking to light, says, I said, you are the root of light. Your hidden form has appeared, O exalted infinite one. May the whole power of the spirit spread, and may it be filled with its light, O infinite light. Then he will not be able to join with the unconceived spirit, and the power of the astonishment will not be able to mix with nature. According to the will of the majesty, my prayer was accepted. So basically, higher Derdekius or higher consciousness is trying to get light to illuminate the power of spirit so that it will no longer be defiled with nature. So to transcend material reality is essentially what's being discussed here. And the voice of the word was heard, saying through the majesty of the unconceived spirit, look, the power has been completed. The one who was revealed by me appeared in the spirit. Again I shall appear. I am Derdekius, the son of the incorruptible, infinite light. So again, you can see a very big parallel here to Jesus. The Gnostic interpretation of Jesus Christ, though, being this emissary of the incorruptible, infinite light. And, this interpretation of Jesus is very cool because it, of course, represents Christ consciousness. That's why I love the line in the Gospel of Philip so much. It's one of my favorite lines is that, like when someone understands what they are no longer a Christian. They are a Christ. That's the whole point, is to become Christ. So anyways, to reach higher consciousness, reach Christ consciousness. So this is Derdekius proclaiming that he is the son of the incorruptible, infinite light. The light of the infinite spirit came down to feeble nature for a short time until all the impurity of nature became void, in order that the darkness of nature might be exposed. I put on my garment, which is the garment of the light of the majesty, which I am. This clothed in the light of the he is that light. I came in the appearance of the spirit, to consider the whole light which was in the depths of the darkness, according to the will of the majesty, in order that the spirit might be means of the word, by means of the word, might be filled with his light independently of the power of the infinite light. And at my wish, the spirit arose by his own power. You see how cool this is? So you have the spirit arising by its own power. But like Derdekius helped him, but remember, we can understand this is when you achieve higher consciousness, that's you by your own power. There's no literal being that's like, oh, waving a fairy wand and now you're filled with light and you reached a new level of consciousness. No, it's through your own hard work and discoveries and inner exploration that you reach higher consciousness. And so the spirit arose by its own power. His greatness was granted to him that he might be filled with his whole light and depart from the whole burden of the darkness. For what was behind was a dark fire that blew and pressed on the spirit. And the spirit rejoiced because he was protected from the frightful water. But his light was not equal to the majesty. So, it's not quite. If you were equal to the majesty, that would be your entire total higher self, completely and totally conscious, completely and totally actualized. And so as we reach higher states of consciousness, we become more and more and more actualized, but of course, never completely actualized. We won't be completely actualized until the end of time, but we get closer and closer and closer. What he was granted by the infinite light was given so that all his members In all his members, he might appear as a single image of light. And when the spirit rose above the water, his dark likeness became apparent. And the spirit honored the exalted light and said, "Surely you alone are the infinite one, because you are above every unconceived thing. For you have protected me from the darkness, and at your wish I arose above the power of darkness." So here we have the spirit connecting with the infinite light, or your consciousness through higher consciousness, through your own power, though, connecting to your higher self. This connection to your higher self, your awareness of the higher self, your awareness of the connection to the higher self, and this is precisely what Carl Jung is talking about when he's talking about making the unconscious conscious. Because if you don't make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate. It'll be that burdensome, shadowy darkness in the background that's fucking up your life and causing addictions and causing harmful habits and causing problems and causing low states of consciousness. Where did I leave off here? Hey, Google, be quiet. I don't know why my Google Assistant is talking about something in the other room. Anyway, surely you alone are the infinite one. I rose above the power of darkness at your wish. You have protected me from the darkness. And that nothing might be hidden from you, Shem, because remember Shem? Jerdekias is telling all this to Shem. And that nothing might be hidden from you, Shem. Like, so Jerdekias is saying, hey, no secrets here. Let me be straight up front with you. The thought which the spirit from the greatness had contemplated came into being, since the darkness was not able to restrain his evil. But when the thought appeared, the three roots became known as they were from the beginning. If the darkness had been able to restrain his evil, the mind would not have separated from him, and another power would not have appeared. So now we're basically talking about that darkness wasn't able to restrain its evil, and because it wasn't able to restrain its evil, mind separated and new powers started to appear. Another power would appeared because of the emanating evil and the consequences of the evil of darkness. So what we have to understand here, I mean, clearly, this is just an interesting story in and of itself, which on face value, it's about the creation of the material world and the interplay between the forces of light, darkness, and spirit. But if we look at this closer, in terms of symbology, if we look at it in a symbolic way, and then also remember, as above, so below, as within, so without, basically, which means the way that reality and the universe is structured, so too is how our mind is structured. They mirror each other. The structure of the universe and the structure of our mind is mirrored. Now, that doesn't mean in a literal way. Well, I shouldn't say literal. Not in an exact way. It's not like you have little planets inside your head, but the fundamental forces and structure and rules that govern the overarching reality govern our own internal structures as well. And so by understanding how the structure of reality works, we understand how the structure of our own selves and own mind works. Now, so this was obviously known in Hermeticism. It's known in Kabbalah. You have the tree of life in Kabbalah, and the tree of life in Kabbalah is a specific pattern that represents the structure of reality, but it also represents the structure of your mind, because they both are patterned on the same rule set, on the same structure, on the same pattern. So as we look at this battle between the darkness, the forces of light, the forces of darkness, and the spirit, we can absolutely understand that this battle and the force of nature is taking place within us, between our higher self, our ego, our dark unconscious, and even our material body. So everything that's being described here, of course, symbolically, not exactly, but we can understand this in an analogy. All of this is happening within us. We have the material aspect of the chaotic material aspect of the body. We have the dark forces of the unconscious mind. We have the ego that sits in the center of our field of consciousness. And then we have this higher self, which is the totality of what we are. And all of these forces are in battle with each other, or are relating to each other in a certain way. And we can understand this in a great way through these stories. But the primary thing that we have to remember when it comes down to it, though, is they were incredibly brilliant, very smart. But one of the major things that they got wrong was that nature is evil, or that darkness has to be destroyed. And that's not the case. Nature is not evil. And our unconscious forces aren't something that we can destroy. We have to integrate them. In other words, harness their power. We have to harness their power so that they serve us rather than serve as a burden for us. So, for example, let's take the example of anger. Like if you have an anger issue, just suppressing it isn't going to help. It's just going to keep coming back and coming back. What you have to do is figure out a way to deal with it or integrate it. All right. So in Jungian terms, or even in Neogenian terms, we would say you would have to integrate it. You are integrating this aspect of your shadow self. What does integrate mean? Integrate is a fancy word for meaning deal with it. You have to find a way to deal with it in a constructive way. And this can take on many different forms. It means you have to accept that it exists within you and that it's a part of you, and figure out a way to incorporate it into your life into a healthy way. This may mean going to therapy and working with a therapist on ways to manage it. It could mean maybe sublimating it into something that is constructive. For example, using that energy to engage in activism that you care about, joining an activist group, or maybe even starting a death metal band to get out your aggression or whatever, but in a constructive and artistic and healthy way. You see the difference here? You're not just denying it and ignoring it. You're finding some way to integrate it, to deal with it, to harness its power so that it could actually improve your life. Like I said, you might start a music group, or help change the world by joining an activist group, or any one of those things. So you see here, you're not denying your darkness. You're harnessing the power of your darkness in service to light. You're bringing darkness into light. And that's important. We're beings of shadow and light, and we can't get rid of or deny these aspects of ourselves. We have to work with them. And that's really important. And I just want to emphasize that, because I think Gnosticism is great. There are just a couple things that are sticky points that can trip a lot of people up. And I really want people to get away from, the material world is evil, I want to escape. The material world is evil, I want to escape. Because that's the same thing as like, I would just want to go to heaven, or I just want to reach nirvana. When the whole point is to transform this world, the more people that are so focused on escape, the less that this world is going to be transformed, because no one's trying to transform it. They're trying to get out of it. We have to change this world. We have to transform this world until it's something enjoyable that we enjoy localizing in. Eventually, we will transcend the material world, but that doesn't come until much later. That's phase 3. We're in phase 1, trying to get humanity to phase 2. Phase 1 is survival. Phase 2 is planetary civilization. Phase 3 is holos independence. So we're trying to get humanity from survival to planetary civilization, which is about maximizing the quality of life in a planetary civilization where we exist in a global network. And then phase 3 is more complicated. It's when we no longer are, then we're no longer tied to the material realm in phase 3. But we have to, we can't skip steps. We have to take the ladder. We have to take the stairs. We have to go step by step. We can't just jump over a bunch of them. So the goal here is to transform ourselves, transform our mind, transform our lives, and transform the world. Not about escaping. Remember, we are gods. Gods create and transform. Gods do not run away. Gods create, gods transform, gods nurture, gods enjoy their creation as well. All of these things, transformation, nurturing, enjoyment, knowledge, learning, wisdom, purpose, all of these things are what we need to incorporate into our lives in the world. Not what so many of these religions are about. Escaping, extinguishment, diminishing, very negative, very depressing. We want to be not have this nihilistic outlook on life, but rather this teleocratic outlook on life, a purposeful outlook in life when we acknowledge our own power and creative and nurturing forces that exist within us and harness those forces. But anyway, there's still a lot more in the paraphrase of Shem. So we will be continuing. Oh, there's quite a lot more. This is very interesting. I like this book a lot. Let me know what you think about it, by the way, in the comments. Tell me. I'm curious what you think. But we're going to be continuing probably next week. And there's so many videos on my channel about Gnosticism and these ideas. So take a look at the different videos on my channel. If you enjoy my work, hey, become a member. Hit the join button right below this video. It helps out a lot. We're having a members only video in just a few minutes, which is about me doing a reaction to a video where a doctor says that mind is not annihilated at death, which is going to be really interesting. I'm very looking forward to that. So that helps out a lot. I appreciate it. Remember my new book, Neogenesis, Dawn of the New Mind. It's available right now. And follow my podcast on Spotify, Dawn of the New Earth. Links to all those things are in the description of this video. Thank you, my friends. I want to give a big shout out to everyone who supports. I appreciate you, especially, let's see, Renaissance Fairy, Cassidy, Angela, DB, Nusalina, Christopher, Yian, and Vanessa. Thank you very much.